I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, blinking in confusion as chaos unfolded before me. It felt like I'd woken up in the middle of some apocalyptic movie. The only crime on my property was my desperate attempt to enjoy a peaceful morning. But just as I took my first sip, tires screeched, and a police car skidded to a halt. Before I could process it, the last person I'd ever expect stormed out, marching toward me like she was commanding a full-scale invasion. Margaret Hensley, the self-proclaimed ruler of the Pine Hollow Homeowners Association, HOA, wielded her clipboard like a scepter and acted as if her authority extended well beyond her own cul-de-sac. Her oversized sunglasses sat perched on her face, more secret agent than nosy busybody. Before I could say a word, she flung her arms skyward and, in a voice so shrill it could shatter glass, bellowed, "This man has an illegal electric fence. He's putting the entire community at risk." I blinked again, staring at her like she'd just accused me of hiding a missile silo. I didn't even live in her neighborhood. It took me a solid 5 seconds to register what was happening. The police officers, who looked as baffled as I felt, fanned out like they were about to bust a cartel hideout. Meanwhile, I stood there in my pajama pants, coffee still in hand, wondering why this woman, who lived 3 miles away, was on my land screaming about my perfectly legal fence. Margaret pointed at it with dramatic flair, as if she'd uncovered a sinister plot. To be fair, my fence was electric, but it wasn't some death-dealing contraption out of a sci-fi thriller. It was a standard livestock fence, low voltage, used by farmers nationwide to keep predators away from animals. Perfectly legal, barely strong enough to bother a squirrel, and, most importantly, none of Margaret's business. One officer, rubbing his temple like he regretted ever clocking in, turned to me. "Sir, we got a call about an illegal hazard on your property." I sighed, sipping my coffee. "You mean my fence?" He nodded. I gestured toward it. "It's legal. I've got all the permits. Want to see them?" Before he could reply, Margaret gasped theatrically, as if I'd just spat on her family crest. "He's lying," she screeched, jabbing a manicured finger at me like I was a war criminal. "I have photographic proof this fence is a death trap. What if kids wander onto his land? What if someone's pet gets fried?" I glanced at the officer, who looked like he was mentally drafting his resignation letter. "Does she even live around here?" I asked, waving vaguely at Margaret, who was practically shaking with fury. The officer sighed, his patience visibly fraying. "No, she's from the HOA 3 miles away." I set my coffee on the porch railing and rubbed my temples. "So why is she here?" Margaret's jaw dropped, as if I'd insulted her very soul. "Because your fence affects our property values," she shrieked. "It's hideous. It's dangerous. I won't let this negligence ruin our community." A younger officer coughed, probably to hide a laugh, while the older one pinched the bridge of his nose. "Ma'am," he said, in the weary tone of a man who'd seen too much, "this man's property isn't in your HOA's jurisdiction." Margaret looked affronted by the very concept of legal limits. "But it's near our community," she argued. "I refuse to let some backwoods lunatic play electrician with deadly fences." I was about to explain that my fence barely gave a mild buzz when, right on cue, my neighbor's goat ambled over. Muffin, as we called him, wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. He loved sticking his nose where it didn't belong. Before anyone could react, Muffin nudged the fence. Zap! The tiny jolt made him hop back, shaking his head like he'd been personally betrayed. Margaret screamed like she'd witnessed a slaughter. The officers and I just watched as Muffin, completely unbothered, flicked his tail and wandered off. This was only the beginning. Muffin's little hop back from the fence would have been hilarious if not for Margaret's ear-splitting wail. "Did you see that?" she shrieked, clutching her chest like she'd witnessed a massacre. An innocent animal, shocked. He could have died. The officers and I stood in silence as Muffin, entirely unfazed, trotted away. One younger officer, who'd been fighting a grin all morning, finally cracked. "Ma'am," he said, barely keeping it together, "it's a livestock fence. It's meant to keep animals safe from predators. That goat just learned his lesson. He's fine." Margaret's face turned crimson, her hands trembling. "I don't care. This is unacceptable. I demand you arrest him for animal cruelty." I blinked. "Arrest me for what? Because a goat got a tickle?" The lead officer turned to me, his face a mix of exhaustion and pity. "Sir," he said, almost apologetically, "do you want to press harassment charges?" Margaret gasped, her nails digging into her clipboard. "Harassment? Me? I'm the victim here." I sighed and shook my head. "Nah, I'd rather just finish my coffee." That broke her. She'd been itching for a fight, and my refusal to play along sent her over the edge. "This isn't over," she screeched, her voice hitting a pitch that probably sent dogs howling miles away. Then, in a huff, she stormed off, only to trip over a patch of dirt. Her clipboard flew, and she hit the ground with an undignified thud, kicking up a cloud of dust. I didn't laugh. Okay, I did. The officers didn't even try to hide their amusement. One coughed to mask a chuckle, while the younger one turned away, shoulders shaking. Even the stoic lead officer pressed his lips together, fighting a smile. Margaret scrambled up, her face a mix of fury and humiliation, snatched her clipboard, and stomped to her SUV. With a dramatic door slam, she peeled out, leaving a dust trail bigger than the police cars had. The officers gave me polite nods and left, clearly eager to escape the madness. I picked up my coffee, took a sip, and sighed. Peace at last, or so I thought. 2 days later, I checked my mailbox and found it stuffed with papers. At first, I assumed it was junk mail, credit card offers, or sweepstakes nonsense. But as I flipped through the stack, my jaw tightened. Violation notices, fines, legal threats, all from an HOA I didn't belong to, stamped with the Pine Hollow HOA logo. They claimed my fence violated neighborhood aesthetics and was a hazardous structure requiring immediate removal. Some warned of escalating penalties. One even threatened a lien on my property. I laughed out loud at that. A lien? They had no authority over me. It was like a toddler declaring martial law from a sandbox. I tossed the papers on my counter, weighing my options. Ignoring them was tempting, but Margaret wouldn't stop. Lawyering up seemed inevitable. Or, I smirked, I could have some fun with this. If she thought fake fines would scare me, she was in for a surprise. Later that day, I visited my neighbor, Tom Wheeler, the unofficial keeper of local lore. I found him on his porch, sipping a beer while Muffin gnawed on an old sock. I dropped the stack of violations next to him. "You won't believe this," I said. Tom squinted at them, then burst into a raspy laugh. "Oh, they don't know when to quit, do they?" I shook my head. "She's fining me from an HOA I'm not even in." Tom chuckled, leaning back. "That sounds about right." I raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you're not surprised?" He took another swig. "Son, Margaret's been running that HOA like a fiefdom for a decade. She fined a guy for painting his door the wrong shade of green, threatened to sue a family over their kids' chalk drawings, even tried to evict a vet for flying an American flag without her blessing." I whistled. "And nobody stopped her?" "Plenty tried." Tom shrugged. "But she feeds on conflict. Push back, and she doubles down. She'd rather torch everything than admit defeat." I rubbed my temples. "Great. Just great." Tom grinned. "So what's your plan?" I smirked. "Oh, I've got ideas. If she wants a fight, she's got one." A few days later, Margaret kicked it up a notch. It started small, odd calls from unknown numbers, random voicemails from concerned citizens. Then it escalated. A woman claiming to be from an animal rights group left a furious message about my electric death trap. Another caller asked if my fence had killed a dog. A third demanded to know how many animals had died on my land. I was clueless until I dug deeper. On the Pine Hollow HOA's private Facebook group, Margaret had posted a doctored video, stock footage of a fried squirrel, claiming it happened on my property. Her caption read, "Warning, this man's illegal high-voltage fence endangers animals and kids. This isn't safe for our community." The comments were a cesspool. "Disgusting. Shut him down. Think of the children." I almost admired her commitment. Almost. Instead, I grabbed my phone. If she wanted to play dirty, I'd play smarter. Margaret wasn't just lying now, she was framing me. One night, my security cameras caught movement near the fence. I pulled the footage and nearly laughed myself sick. There, dressed in black like a cartoon burglar, was Margaret, dragging a dog crate. She was clearly planning to release an animal near the fence, hoping for a shock she could film. But her plan backfired. As she fumbled with the crate, she tripped over a rock, face planting in the dirt with a thud. Scrambling up, she backed into the fence. Zap! The mild jolt made her shriek and flail like she'd been tasered. She cursed, abandoned her scheme, and fled to her car. I saved the footage and sent it to my lawyer, the county animal control office, and, because why not, posted a short, tasteful clip online with the caption, "When your neighbor trespasses at night and learns electric fences work." The internet took it from there. Within hours, the video went viral. Thousands laughed at Margaret's flop, with comments like, "This is comedy gold. Darwin Award nominee. I need a whole HOA reality show." Her credibility tanked. But she wasn't done. 2 nights later, someone tried to cut my fence. Gloves, wire cutters, the works. My cameras caught it all, and the sheriff wasn't amused. The next morning, Margaret stormed up to my porch, a bandage on her wrist, radiating fury and something like fear. "How dare you?" she screamed, jabbing my chest. "You set me up? That video. You posted it to humiliate me. Take it down now." I crossed my arms. "You mean the video of you trespassing and trying to frame me?" Her face went scarlet. "It was a social experiment," she sputtered. I nearly choked. "Eh what?" "To test the community's reaction to animal abuse," she doubled down. I smirked. "So, you admit you trespassed?" She froze, then stormed off, heels stabbing the gravel. The next day, a fake cease and desist notice appeared on my door. Cheap paper, Pine Hollow HOA Legal Department letterhead, signed in Margaret's cursive. It rambled about electrical warfare and public safety crises. I showed it to Tom, who nearly choked on his coffee laughing. "She thinks this'll scare you," he wheezed. I grinned. "I'm tempted to frame it." Tom snorted. "Send it to the paper. Let the town see her lunacy." I considered it, but decided to let her bury herself. Sure enough, my lawyer called later, chuckling. "Margaret filed a lawsuit against you. Small claims, emotional damages." I blinked. "From what?" "Distress over your unsafe fence," he laughed. "She's got fake testimonials, including one claiming your fence shocked their kid." "No proof." "None." "We'll shred it in court." In court, Margaret's theatrics were Oscar-worthy. She ranted about my fence ruining community harmony and causing her unbearable stress. The judge, a no-nonsense woman, cut her off. "Ma'am, any evidence this fence harmed you?" Margaret faltered. "I've had complaints. Any proof you control his property?" "Well, no, but..." "Dismissed," the judge sighed. Margaret fumed, but I walked out grinning. She caught me in the parking lot, hissing, "This isn't over." I sighed. "Go home, Margaret." She peeled out, tires squealing. That night, her HOA cronies spray-painted HOA rules on my barn. That was it. I sent the footage to the cops. By morning, they'd arrested Margaret. Paint cans and a hit list in her car sealed her fate. The HOA turned on her overnight. Residents spilled years of her tyranny. The board ousted her. A for sale sign sprouted in her yard. As her moving trucks rolled out, Tom strolled over, chuckling. "Reckon that's the last of her?" I nodded. "Let's hope." Muffin-eyed the fence. I patted him. "Not today, buddy." Sipping my coffee, I smiled at my barn, clean now, and my fence still standing. Margaret's reign was over. Entitlement and control only go so far when you pick the wrong fight.